personal.
I was gonna ask you that,
personal
because
social
not
media.
people, I probably asked you that.
I won't want to know your person.
Yeah,
John.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
That's why I started. Then
And,
I wasn't ready to like, I still wanted to like get through the awkwardness or whatever in the beginning, so I did social media, video.
hey.
Yeah, I told it, good, bad, yeah, whatever. Get all of it out of your system. Look in the water, it's gonna be cold, you're gonna have fun.
so, welcome.
So,
How's everybody doing? Questions on anything that we've gone over so far? Did everybody did their CMAs, didn't they? That is, I think, a first. Absolute first. You're sitting over there last time, aren't you? Okay,
Did you bring any treats for us all to do?
I did not bring treats, you know,
Sorry,
John. Wow, yes,
So
yes,
teacher you
yes.
are.
that sucks, doesn't it?
It does.
I kind of forgot about the treats, so.
Couldn't help it.
All right, so if nobody's got any questions about anything, agency, purchase agreement, CMAs, then we're gonna start with listing agreements. Everybody got their Keller Williams listing agreements?
And,
You what?
real quick.
Copy of mine.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna write anything down, you can follow along with somebody.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, now that we have, is everybody on the page?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Ben. Good.
Now that we've figured out what price that we're gonna list our house at, our little house at 2139 Meadow Lane. We're probably they're probably not gonna hire Matt because Matt's like about $30,000 below everybody.
They're hiring Matt. For sure.
So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fill out the listing agreement and we're gonna get rolling. So let's just start from the top. Property address, we're gonna put our property address in, and then we're gonna put our client's name. Now, we wanna make sure, right, now we already know because we've already gone through this with the CMA part of it, but where do we find out the client's name and if they're the owners? What's that? Yep, you go to the county site, check it out, make sure they're the owners. Have you ever done that and they haven't been the owners
Yeah. Or there's additional,
or additional owners?
yeah, like, my parents are on the thing too, or.
Yep. So sometimes you go on there and you look and there's more than one person on there. Or maybe they're not even listed.
Or it's a trust.
Or it's a trust. So if that happens, don't feel stupid by asking questions. You call them up and you say, hey, you know, I'm filling out the paperwork here and I see that your name's not on it. What's going on? Oh, well, that's my parents. I'm the trustee, you know, whatever. I mean, they'll probably tell you that when you reach out to them first, but make sure that you do your due diligence if you do see that come up, and it does from time to time. And it's really fun. So anyway, you put the client's name, start date, expiration date. So we're gonna put the start date of, and I've had that here just recently. You put the start date of when you're listing it?
I go off of this, whatever day that I'm intending it to hit the market.
Right.
So not today's date, otherwise you have 24 hours to get
So-
on MLS.
Good example, we did one yesterday. She signed it yesterday, and she is going live on Thursday. So we put Thursday's date and the start date.
Yeah.
And then go ahead, question?
That's how you're supposed to do it?
If you put like, if you were the seller and we're planning on listing your house on Monday, for example.
Yeah.
Don't put today's date, because once this is signed in a valid agreement, you have 24 hours to get it on the MLS or you're in violation. of
Right,
the
so,
rules.
Well, that's great.
So you just amend it, you just do an amendment.
Yeah.
And change.
yeah, I just do an amendment, we're gonna go over amendments here a little bit, but that's what I do, I put the start date of the date that we're gonna hit the market. And if they sign it today, that's fine.
We're authorizing the contract to be valid on whatever it started.
Right. Now, the old listing agreement, before we had to change it again, actually had a date kind of in the middle when you were planning on putting it on. I always liked that. I don't know why they took that out. But we changed this darn thing so many times when the rules changed. This is probably like the fifth one that they redid. I wasn't gonna bring that one up anymore because Tim was getting kind of pissed doing them. So, anyway, so that's how I do it. So the date that's
Part
gonna
of
hit the
Why
market.
we like Keller Williams, to be an agent and like nobody at a brokerage level is like keeping you in tune with changes like that. I like that about Keller Williams.
Yeah, and I love well, you're all new, but John and Matt. I like this. I like the two forms, the listing agreement and the purchase agreement that KW, or that our office has put together. I really, really like it. First, the rest of this first page is just like the real estate relationship disclosure. Now, we skipped the first page, the real estate relationship disclosure. When you do a buyer agency agreement or a listing agreement, it has to have a real estate relationship disclosure with it, right? We're gonna backtrack, go ahead and flip one page back. You guys have all seen this since we did it with buyer. Why, and John and Matt not answer this. When does the client sign this form twice? The first one twice. Does anybody know?
When they're
I'm not gonna make you answer because you haven't done this part yet.
when they're choosing not to have representation.
Perfect. When they are choosing not to have representation, and when could that be?
For sale by
For
owners.
sale by owner. So if you're doing a listing agreement, they're not gonna be a for sale by owner. But if you are working with a buyer, okay, you've signed a buyer, and that buyer calls you and says, hey, Matt, I wanna go and look at this for sale by owner, here's the address, can you set that up? You're gonna call them up, and then you're gonna say, I've got a client that would like to look at your house, and by the way, I do, under law, need to explain how you could be represented if you were gonna be represented by us. They're gonna sign in the colored box there that you explained it to them, and then they're also gonna sign underneath saying that, yes, he explained it, but I don't want representation. Okay, that's how that goes. So if you do it for sale by owner, remember, you have to have a real estate relationship disclosure with them too. Okay,
Or an unrepresented buyer, right?
or an
Or the
unrepresented
listing
buyer.
agent.
Yep. So, okay, so that, the rest of that first page is kind of like the real estate relationship disclosure. The middle of the second page, you're gonna ask them to initial on the yes for appointed agency and on the yes for limited agency. Now, you've already explained it to them, so they should understand it. And you looked at me funny, so what's your question?
So on that part. I've always thought it's weird that they're not technically agreeing to the representation, they're agreeing to the potential of it if it shows up.
Very good. I don't like the wording of that.
Yeah,
And I'm glad you brought that up, because you must have learned that in my other
Probably.
class before. I always tell them the potential, even though it doesn't say potential in there. I just did one. I just did a buyer agency, and I told him, I said, I'm gonna have you initial in the yes box there, because you're gonna agree to the potential of limited agency. And I explained to them the agency, the different agency options, they move. It's always a moving target. We're gonna sign one page, we're gonna do the real estate relationship disclosure, but it's got all three boxes checked. Because I could be an appointed agent, I could be a limited agent, and I'm always a single agent until we look at a Keller Williams property. And that's how I explain it. And it's pretty, they all seem to understand it that way pretty good. But yes, you're gonna get to this point, whether in a buyer agency agreement or the listing, and you're gonna say, I would like you to agree to appointed agency. And remember, appointed agency is when it's not me or my broker. But it's another Keller Williams agent. So it's another Keller Williams listing or client, buyer agent that is showing the property. That is not me as your seller agent or my broker. Right, that's appointed agency. And limited agency when it's me, just pretend I'm not the broker right now. Me as your listing agent or my broker bringing a client. Then that's limited agency. So you guys are limited agency probably isn't going to happen too much. Because you're a regular single agent. And David doesn't list a bunch of houses anymore. Me, I do sometimes, but sometimes I don't. But I'm really the only one that really lists a fair amount of houses as a broker. Tim doesn't anymore. And David very rarely. So the only time it's me or if it's you individually.
with Chris being the MCA, is he included in that?
Yes, Chris is too. I kind of forgot about Chris.
So does his name?
You know what? That's a good one. Well, I'm gonna talk to him about that. I would think he is too, because he knows everything. I mean, that's the reason. If you know about everybody's stuff, they should be listed as a limited agent.
Can we back up a second?
Yep.
On the expiration date, how far out do you go?
Glad you asked that. I usually do 4 months. That's what I do.
I do it here.
You do a year.
A full year.
If you can get somebody to go a year, go a year. I've just always done 4 months. I don't know why. There's no explanation for it. It's just that's what I do.
You'll have to set that, like, determine that for yourself.
Yep.
What works for you.
Yeah, just whatever you feel comfortable doing.
Realistically, if you even sold that house in 6 months, you're probably gonna have serious discussion with the seller already.
Right. Yeah. You're exactly right. So you might not last a
Yeah,
year.
you might not like that conversation,
Uh-huh.
but yeah.
So my question to you, if you were listing for me, I would say, why do you think you need a year?
I don't need a year, but when you're on the market and any given day, we're talking to different potential buyers. or any other interest in the property. The last thing I want to do is confuse anything by having to draft an amendment and extending a contract. I'd rather get it sold earlier than projected, or if it doesn't sell, we can withdraw it. It's cleaner to me that way.
Especially if the contract is signed in your 4 months and then it closes outside, that gets messy.
No, if you're under contract, it's close. You don't have to do it.
You want to redo it?
Nope,
You're under
if
contract.
you're under contract and it
before
runs
it
out,
expires.
you were under contract before it ran out. So you get to continue on. Now, I always suggest getting an extension anyway. You don't have to. So, but they're gonna sign it because they're happy. We're under contract. Hey, our listing, expired. Let's go ahead and extend it through the potential closing. How's that? Or maybe a little bit after. No problem. Hey, great. Good job. Good job, guys. Thanks for getting us under contract. So I've never had a problem getting them to sign an extension. Now, if you've got somebody that's a real pain in the butt and refuses to sign it, you're still okay, because the rules say that as long as you're under contract before it expires, it goes through. So. Okay, any other questions?
If you were in a position of having to take backup offers for whatever reason, then you'd probably have to extend it as well.
You're under contract. You can
Yeah.
take backup offers.
Yeah,
If you're, even if say this expired and you didn't.
that's it. That's a good question.
One part where it talks about in negotiations, enters into purchase agreement or under negotiations of this is still a valid contract. I don't like the start date. I really don't like the start date at all.
Just think of it as the date I'm gonna let the world know it's for sale.
Yeah.
The date that I'm gonna.
So what do you want? I'm gonna ask you,
Well,
what,
because the start date is the start of this contract, and the start of this contract is when you sign the contract.
okay,
That is when we start this. List date should be put, like, projected list date should go in this other instructions. Projected list date on MLS should be on this date. That is what we're shooting for, because that will give them the ideas that there's a goal out there. This is when you need to have your group and group, but your contract's not even valid
So-
Do it with whole from MLS.
until then.
yeah, you've got you got a thing. Well, you know what, let's just move on. Let's move on and we'll get to that. We'll get to that spot.
Okay.
To me, it's kind of a gray area. So if you feel better doing that, I don't have a problem. If you want to address it in the other provisions, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what I do. And that's why I always think it's kind of a weird, because a lot of times we do sign it before we put it on the market.
I want it signed before I'm getting photos scheduled and doing my marketing.
Right.
But none of it's legal. None of it's legal until it hits MLS. This contract is not legal because of that start date.
But they signed it.
They're signing it today.
I know,
to
but your terms of your contract is between this day and this day. So it's
Yes.
still not legal.
the Contract to list the house. Are you gonna do photos?
But
same day?
it doesn't say that. This
To
is,
start up-
this is the listing agreement, not the agency agreement, the listing agency agreement.
So are you gonna sign this before you do a CMA? How would you get this signed before you even present a CMA or get the appointment or anything?
I don't know about that, but I think some of that goes through that. I got really mixed feelings, and I'll tell you why about that, and that has more to do with something else.
Okay, well, let's move on and then
Okay.
we'll talk.
Feels
But
like,
it's okay. I mean, there's different ways to skin a cat, right? However you feel. I'm not saying either's wrong.
sure.
If you feel that that you want to do it that way and spell it out in, number 23 or whatever number it is. Other provisions,
Well, it really,
14, sorry,
it
23.
really does put you at risk.
Well, I mean,
Because what if in the meantime, between that week or 2 weeks or however long it takes you to get that house listed, they list with somebody else, but the contract, their date on it's newer, your contract isn't even valid.
see, I don't know what would happen. They signed it. They signed it today. Okay, so they signed it today and we're not putting it on the market.
For tomorrow.
What's that?
For a burger tomorrow.
For a burger
If they
tomorrow.
signed it today and it's supposed to list on Monday, they can't sign with another agent for any time that overlaps the time that you have agreed to. And I think at
Yeah.
that point, you're splitting hairs, like, have you ever experienced that?
No,
Right, in 20 years?
no.
So it's like,
I've never had anybody say, no, this isn't a legal contract, but you know what? There's a first for everything, right? I mean, so I've never seen it happen on, any of us,
Sure,
but you know what? Now that you're talking about it, it'll probably happen
in that scope, I don't.
and.
Well, because I always just, the date our contract starts today, I go out 6 months. Sometimes they go out a year, depending on what I know about the house, or people, or,
So what you would like to do, and I'm not saying don't do it. You would like to put start date today.
agreement starts today.
In other provisions, you're gonna say, will not be listed on the MLS till this day.
let's just be the withhold from MLS.
You do a withhold from MLS.
I've done
I
that with
tell
two.
them.
You can do it that either way.
I don't, but they don't do a withhold from MLS anymore, do they?
I don't,
I think it's on that sheet right there,
I've
ain't it?
never been told not to.
I have a question, does that date? They're signing and dating when they sign the contract, so that's when the contract
That's the
signed.
date and time that their signatures were applied to it.
Right, so
That's not.
you can tell,
necessarily-
I know you can tell when the contract is signed, and isn't that when the contract is valid, and does it matter when?
Not with your start date though.
See, that's what I've always thought.
That's stupid.
That's what I've always thought. The
Well-
start date of when it's going on the MLS is this. That's the start date, but they signed the contract with me today.
But that's when our contract starts, is the day they sign it. That's why the start date should be the same as the date they sign
And you know what? Maybe you're right.
Let me,
Um,
I'm gonna disagree with you. When I sign a lease, my lease will start on the 1st of May, but they can easily sign it 3 days earlier, but the contract does not start until the 1st of May. So, and they don't start paying me till the 1st of May. So the two dates can be different. Like Matt says, I'm signing it today to tell everybody I signed it today for the contract to be enforceable starting on the day, 3 days into the future.
So when you're listing your houses, how long is it taking you to get the house on the market?
Could be weeks for cleaning and
So, yeah.
photographs and that kind of stuff.
So Kaler's always sign their contracts before. And it's always a week to 10 days before they put it active, because then they get photographers and they start their marketing and getting all that stuff ready.
And we get 24 to 48 hours before.
So I don't know what they do here. I don't know if they do it, withhold it, and then do an addendum to get it going. I don't know. I would have to ask them, and that would be a good question.
Do they have to have the pictures and all that before it can go live on MLS, or can they?
One photo, one
One
exterior
photo?
photo.
Okay,
Yeah.
'cause I've never done one, so I don't.
Yep, you have to have at least one photo. You have to have the property disclosure in, because you'll get fined if you don't. And you'll get fined if you don't have a picture. And there's a lot of exterior picture. There's a lot
And yeah, once for that.
of people that
And then it's
violate.
like 24 or 48 hours.
24.
24,
One, yeah, 24, one business day, so Friday, the next day would be Monday.
yeah.
So that's how, this is how I've always done it. If you feel better doing it the other way, make sure that you document what you're doing.
Sure, I mean, I just was like, well, our agreement starts today.
Yeah.
Ends on this time, and then they sign it. If I'm there and I'm getting them to sign, like, we're in now.
Okay, make sure you state that
Yeah.
it's not gonna go on the MLS till this date, because here's another thing, and it hasn't happened. But this is the way our MLS is so fine happy. You add it to the MLS, okay, we're gonna do it your way, right? We're gonna do it your way. And I'm not picking on you, but,
You can pick on me, I'd rather know because.
so we've signed it today, right?
Mhm,
And we're not gonna put it on until Friday,
mhm,
so there's 2 days, right?
mhm.
So Friday comes and you are putting it in the MLS. Your start date, you're gonna put 2 days before, right? Because that's what's on your contract. And the MLS is gonna look at that, they could check that and say, how come it took you 48 hours to put that on? Here's a $25 fine. And then you're gonna go, and maybe you go, oh, well, here's what I did here. I wrote in other provisions that we were not putting it on the MLS till today.
Yeah, huh,
I don't know what they do. I don't know if they say, oh, cool, Rachel, that's good, thank you.
we're
Or
gonna,
they say, too bad, fork it over. You know, I don't know what they
that
say.
seems like a Carol question.
You know what? That would be a great Carol question. I'd like to know, but that's how I do it, just because
Sure.
I look at that. I always look at stuff, but how am I gonna get fined? Or how am I not gonna get fined, right?
No, but that's good because, I mean, I don't mind doing it that way. I'll do it like the norm. I can walk the same path, but it gives them the expectation at least that we're doing it on this day, get your group in a group.
But in my thought is you are getting it signed, right? So you do have a contract. Now, who knows? Maybe you run into a guy who's a contract lawyer and he's gonna say, well, that ain't right. But then you could run into another, just like any of these lawyers, you could ask a lawyer, 3 different lawyers, the same question, you come up with 3 different answers, right? You just don't know. That's one thing that they've run into with all these lawsuits they've had over the last couple of years, is you get different answers from every lawyer that they don't know. And it really is. If it goes up against a judge, in a court of law, if somebody says, you know what, we didn't have a legal contract, so I decided to go list with somebody else. And you're gonna say, no, I had a legal contract, you know, if you're doing it like me,
Mhm.
and if we're not listening for 3 days later. And then list with somebody else and say, well, Will, you said that we're starting on Friday. I signed it today, but legally we don't have a contract in my eyes. No, I feel that you do, and then it ends up going to a judge. What's the judge gonna say?
Depends on the
Exactly.
judge.
Depends on the judge. I don't know what.
I don't, in my mind, it's not that open. I think contract says start date, and the cuffs that you're bound by are the MLS's cuffs, and with the order of 24 hours to add it on MLS or your fines. That's the friction point,
That's kind of why I do it that
right?
way,
Because I don't, yeah. I
is
think that-
because I'm gonna put in there Friday for the start date, even though I signed it today.
And then you guys just do an amendment for listing date?
Really don't even do it.
I don't do an amendment. I sign that, you sign it.
Well, let's say it's supposed to be listed on Friday, they don't get their proof in the group, you gotta do it the following week.
Then you do an addendum.
Then you'll do an amendment,
Yep.
huh?
Then you do an addendum because they weren't ready Friday, when you said in your other,
And then when you put that into the MLS, you do it off your amendment date, not
Yes.
your
yeah,
contract date?
yeah,
Okay.
because you're, in the amendment, you're saying start date
Yeah, okay,
to be
So
okay,
the Monday.
avoid all of this and keep it like, for the sake of keeping your clarity in mind,
yeah,
when you are going over the contract and you're about to put in dates, as the real estate professional, if you know your photographer takes 3 to 5 days, if you know they have a bunch of stuff to get out and get ready for pictures to be ready, just give yourself enough of a time, a realistic start date. Don't wait until, oh, we gotta amend it, they weren't ready. Like, don't, just give yourself the time on the front end.
Yeah, but that house that I sold on Fairmont,
It's one out of hundreds that go on the market every day, you know?
well, I know, but I mean, are they gonna catch that? Because I did it the way that, because to me, the start date was the
Yeah.
start of this
So
contract.
you did it the way that you want to do it, and
But I didn't have anything else
So
that
when did
wasn't,
you do it?
wasn't aware. I
When-
mean, the house is sold.
the house is sold, so they didn't catch it, right?
Yeah,
You're good, you didn't
Yeah.
get caught.
okay.
Somebody's gonna have to catch you and turn you in.
Oh, okay.
What was your name?
Yeah. About to make MLS my buddy.
My name is
Matt.
Vanessa
But, yeah,
Jones.
How would they catch you? I mean, not that
They
I,
go on Notre Dame this. spring.
Well,
they don't see this, do they?
now I'm getting a conspiracy theorist here,
that's
but
true.
I think they actually, I think Amy used to actually check it. She's the lady that used to run it. I think she used to go through and check it
If you're big enough fish,
and find,
you do enough business, people that aren't doing as much, they'll watch you.
Well, no matter what the date says on this, always make sure it's 24 hours on there.
Just make sure your start date, guys.
so, I mean,
It's so
again,
overthink.
somebody's gonna have to turn you in. I know we're getting way off here.
Yeah.
But somebody's gotta turn you in to get fined. So, me personally, I don't turn anybody in. I'm gonna give somebody a call. If I'm looking at a property that doesn't have a disclosure on it, I'm gonna call that agent and say, hey, man, you've had this listed for a week now, and there's no disclosure. And it's not new construction, and it's not an estate sale. Or land, or commercial. If it's a regular residential property, it needs to have disclosure. And you don't have it in there, just wanna let you know, go ahead and upload that in there and get that in, because I don't want you to get fined,
Oh, you have.
right? That's what I do. Some people will turn you in, they'll call the board and say, hey, Will didn't have a disclosure on MLS number, blah, blah, blah. I'm turning him in. And this crappy thing about it, now I'm really getting off on my box. The crappy thing about it is they do it all anonymously,
You'll never know.
so I'll never know who turned me in. That makes me mad.
I'd make you.
I said something to Amy one time. I went down there with my check, with my fine check, and I said, I wanna talk with you, and I said, how come I don't get to know who turned me in? And she goes, well, Will, remember when you were on the board, you were the ones that voted that rule in, and I says, I don't remember that, but I don't agree with it. And she goes, well, what would you do if you knew? I mean, she was such a snot. And I said, I'd call him up. I'd call him up and I'd say, hey, why'd you turn me in? Why didn't you give me a courtesy call? That's what I would have done to you.
Carol said that that's what they're telling people to do before they go to the board.
That's what they should do. Give a
Yeah, like
courtesy
go
call.
do the courtesy call, and if it's still an issue,
Then,
then come back and.
Absolutely. Yep, okay. All right, where were we?
Legal description.
We're at number 2. All right, number 2. So we've got them to sign for the potential of limited agency, the potential of appointed agency, right?
Mhm.
What happens, just real quick, what happens if they say, I don't agree with the potential of appointed agency? How would you deal with that?
Then we can't look at anything Keller Williams,
That's
And we-
what I say.
and they hold 25% of the market.
Yep, there you go. Say, well, if we don't agree to the potential of appointed agency, we can't show Keller Williams properties.
And that won't be good for you.
And that won't be good for you because we hold a very large portion of the market. And you want to see everything, right? Or in this case, you want everybody to be able to see your house, right? So that's how you get around that. Maybe one time in my entire career, I've had somebody argue that they didn't like limited agency or appointed agency. It's not a big deal. You explain to them like that, they sign. So don't, a lot of people, a lot of agents get hung up on that, thinking, oh, what happens if they don't sign? They'll sign. Yeah. That's right. All right, number two. Now we're at number two. Number two is legal description. Where do you find that?
Or property search.
Property search, where? At the county?
Yeah.
There you go. Is it a good idea to get it from the MLS from a previous listing?
No.
No, not. Why?
Cloning error.
Cloning error. Yeah. What happens if you had a knucklehead agent that put it in before and flipped the. I had a good example today, not of legal description, but of agents putting their stuff in the MLS and doing it wrong. I was helping a client, and we were looking for properties under or over a half acre. So clicked over a half acre on the search. And here comes one that's 0.13. And I'm like, really? And then I look, and then where it says, it has the little range on there that you click on, and they click the 0.5 to 1 acre instead of the 1.3.
Zip codes. Zip codes, they get backwards 57731 or 20, it says 202.
Yeah, so they'll put in the wrong acreage code, they'll put in, they'll flip, instead of lot 13, they'll put lot 31. A lot of stuff like that, so make sure that you check it. I made the mistake, I put it in wrong, I copied it wrong when I'm doing the purchase agreement, I put it in wrong because they've had it in wrong. I flipped it myself. I've done everything. I've made all the mistakes. And you just need to make sure that you do it right. Usually the title company catches the legal description mess up, usually.
I have a question.
Yes.
And when you go to pull legal description off like Meade County's GIS or something, it says specifically not to use it on legal documents.
Right.
So I copy and paste straight off of that
Mhm.
because of the title company, like knowing they do their preliminary work. Is that, is there any other way?
No,
Okay.
and I always thought that too. But first I thought that, I go, wow, well then what do I use then if I can't use it?
What's your job then? The purpose of it.
But the longer you're in it, I finally realized that that's just a CYA for them. That's all that is. They're just covering their own butt.
Yep.
Because if it happens to be wrong, well, we told you not right there, not to use it on a legal document. That's their way of keeping it. So usually 99.9% of the time it's the correct legal description. Okay, then you put county that it's in, also known as is, of course, the physical address, 123 Main Street. And then you check underneath if it's for sale or lease. So you can use this form for a lease as well. Letter A, line 86 is the terms. So for the sum of, well, that is the asking price. So you're gonna list it for $599. On the following terms, cash or a new loan. Usually that's what I put, cash or new loan. That means the seller is gonna accept either a cash deal or the buyer getting a new mortgage. Sometimes we can do contract for deed. And if you're if your seller is willing to do that, cash, new loan, or contract for deed, you write in there. If you've got somebody that says, I want to do a contract for deed, my opinion, what's one of the first things you should ask them?
Call your lawyer.
There's a,
That's not an ask, that's a tell.
there's a mortgage or,
If there's a mortgage. A lot of times, probably most of the time, if there's a big enough mortgage on it, the lender isn't gonna let you do a contract for deed. Cause they don't wanna be, they wanna be in first position. They don't want anything else to be in their way, right? So I'm doing one right now. It's gonna be the very first one that I'm ever gonna get to go through, I think. Cause I've never gotten them through. I've never done a full contract for deed to the finish. And I told her, I says, call and make sure that the bank is okay with it. Well, she owes some money. And they said, well, no, we're not gonna do that, unless you pay it off. So she can pay it off at close, because she's gonna have enough money down to pay off her contract for deed. So that's the other thing, if you're doing a contract for deed, make sure you have enough money down payment to cover any payoff that you need and to cover your fee, realtor's fees,
And hopefully for them to have some left over.
and hopefully for them to have some left over, yeah.
Generally 20 to 30% suggests.
So,
I take a
whatever.
whole contract for deed.
Did you?
Very well equipped.
Good. Well,
Yeah,
I
but
might
how
ask
often
you
does
some
that
questions.
happen?
What's that?
How often does that happen?
Contract for deeds are
Rare anymore. these
very,
days.
very, yeah. But you know what, with the interest rates, you might start,
I've seen them because the house doesn't qualify for a loan.
yep,
And so it gives me time to work on the house, the new buyer can work on the house and make it loan worthy to pay off the contract for deeds
so to pay it
or
off,
for just for a conventional loan.
yeah.
I'm dealing with that one right now and I've talked to you about it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. We're still working on contract deed, lease to own, cash, arsons, whatever.
They're wild. They're a lot.
Yeah,
Maybe off track, but what about unassumable loss?
so. I suppose if you had an assumable loan, you could write it in there too. Assumable loans are. God, I've had mixed reviews on that. A lot of them are tough to do. They take a long time to do. The VA doesn't, that's their big thing. Oh, they're assumable, that's great. But finding somebody to do an assumable loan is really, really hard. Well, it's the place that owns the mortgage is the one assuming it, right? Or the people that are buying it are assuming that interest rate. But the people that hold, or the mortgage company that holds the mortgage is the one that has to approve them, right? And they're not making any money. So they don't want to really do it. That's what I found. They drag their feet, they take a long time. They don't want to qualify the people because they want to sell them a loan for 6% instead of 2.5. The other thing about an assumable loan is some people might not realize is if you did the loan, you've got a VA loan, okay? And you bought it 10 years ago, and you're at a 3.0% rate, and you bought it at 150,000, now your house is worth 400. Well, you owe, let's say you owe 100,000 on the house, and you're listing it for 400. John has to bring 300,000.
Yeah, I'm just taking over.
Right, you're not taking over the payment, because you want to make money, right? And you'll gladly give them the assumption, yeah, take my loan, that's great. Bring 300,000 to closing so you can get my loan. That's the other problem. So those are a lot tougher, and I think, I think the VA needs to do a better job of,
Just
Oh,
curious.
yeah, this period, yeah. They need to do a better job of explaining it and letting people know it's not that great of a deal. My opinion. So, yeah, so,
Get that much cash, you can do it.
right, exactly. Exactly. And if you wanna, what's the advantage of a VA loan?
It's a guaranteed, just it's a 100% guaranteed month.
But if you gotta bring 300,000, I mean, the big thing for VA
That's pretty
loan,
guaranteed.
big thing on a VA loan is no down. 100% financing. Well, if you're doing an assumption, it's no down, you're bringing a big chunk. All right, page 3. Here is the new part of the listing agreement that I love. I don't know how you guys love it?
Absolutely love it.
Love it.
This is really.
Makes me feel powerful.
This talks about our commissions. This is how we get paid, right? And on a listing, there's 6 different things we got to look at. The first one is client authorizes the broker to cooperate with brokers who represent buyers. Yes or no? Yeah. Normally, you're gonna say yes on that, right? Explain to them that, hey, Mr. Seller, we're gonna put this on the MLS and you're gonna want us to cooperate. And by cooperate means, if they call, ask us questions about the property, we're gonna share with them, right? That's pretty easy. B is talks about compensation to us, the seller's broker. It's gonna be, the first line is if you're a flat amount. Second line is a percentage. On yours, does it say 2.5 or is yours blank?
Mine's blank.
Okay. I usually put 3. I don't know why it's 2.5, but I usually
Listing?
put 3.
Put 3.5.
Yep, you put 3.5. I put 3. Some people put 2.5. Whatever you want to do. Remember, they're all fully negotiable, right? That's the first thing, right up here and above that in big bold letters, all broker commissions are fully negotiable, right? So you let them know that. And then I always put 3 in there and I explain why. And they start going back and forth and, if we end up at 2.5, depends on the price of the house, right? C is client authorizes the seller's broker, that's us, to offer compensation to the buyer's broker. Yes or no?
No.
So, Mr. Seller, are you willing to offer compensation to a buyer's agent if they bring an offer? Now, remember the old days, we'd list it at 6%, right? And we'd split it generally 3 and 3. And we'd state it in the MLS. So they knew what they were making. Those days are done. They got taken out. So we don't know if they are offering buyer compensation. So C is asking can we let them know if we're offering compensation? Yes or no? I'm gonna tell my client, yes. I'm gonna say, you know what? If you're gonna offer compensation, allow me to at least say, yes, you are offering compensation. So that's where I'm gonna say yes. And then we're gonna say at a flat fee or up to a certain percentage, right? Of the selling price. What's
Ask a quick question.
Yep.
In here, in the Black Hills, what percentage of, sellers are actually saying no
I haven't had any.
So what, to see?
to offering any
Yeah,
compensation?
Yeah. I haven't had anybody say,
Curious.
I'm not offering.
Not to C, but to D, yeah, that's, no,
So D,
sorry,
yeah, he's jumping ahead. He just can't help
I
it.
couldn't hear C or D.
D says client authorizes broker to disclose compensation amount. I always say no.
Okay. Good.
Now, why do we want to say no?
You don't want it to be predetermined, you don't want to give that information on the front side, it's a negotiating point.
Exactly. That's what I love about this rule is, hey, yep, they're gonna pay you, but write it in the offer.
If they're signing their buyer at like 2%, I don't want to give up that 0.5% commission because it's assumed, or I told them 2.5. No,
Right.
if I could save my seller a 0.5%.
Because then they'll turn around and they'll do an addendum for 2.5 on the buyer agency. Remember, the buyer agency, when you state on the buyer agency what you want, you have to ask for that in a purchase agreement. So if, like Matt said, if you put 2% in a buyer agency agreement, you can't ask more than 2% on your purchase or on the purchase agreement when you write an offer. Right?
So when, sorry, it's just a little confusing. Both sides, but. So let's say I list the house, I put 2.5. Matt's buyer's side, they want 3 in the purchase agreement. They can't offer any more than that unless you get an addendum for this one. Is that, did I understand
And
that?
Matt is the buyer agent
Uh-huh,
and Matt only puts 2% on his buyer agent form.
right, and we were offering 2.5, he can't get
He
2.5,
can only ask in the purchase agreement 2%.
right,
And you don't have to disclose that, well, I'm gonna give you 2.5. You're gonna accept it because,
but when it's
Yeah.
the way that I said none of that past that, the purchase agreement
What I asked for,
overrides this amount.
what the buyer agent asked for has nothing to do with what you and the seller agreed to in your agreement.
right,
So if I ask for more than you and, like, if I ask for 3% as a buyer agent,
Mhm.
and you agreed with your client to offer 2.5%,
Mhm.
when you're presented the offer to your seller, you're gonna say, in the listing agreement, we agreed that we would offer
Uh-huh.
2.5%. In this offer, they actually asked for 3%, so your net income profit is gonna be, if we agree to it,
Lower,
or we can counter back and say 2.5.
Yep.
But don't disclose that to the other agent.
right,
right.
but this doesn't need, there's nothing, that
It-
just kind of goes away.
It doesn't have to match on the listing agreement. The
Okay,
one
I
that has to match is the buyer agency. You can't ask for
Okay.
something different on that.
Nope, that's good, that's what I wanted to know.
And exactly, Matt explained that perfectly. If you put 2.5 that you're offering a buyer agent and they come in with 3 and they come in with a full price offer that's cash and it's awesome, it might be worth it to that seller to pay that other 0.5%, right?
Mhm.
Instead of coming back and saying, well, yeah, everything's great, but we're only paying 2.5.
Why I do 3.5% of listing agreements is partially to account for if an agent, if we agree to 2.5 to a buyer agent, they come in at 3. I have 0.5% as the
You can
agent.
take it off.
I can go down to 3% as a listing agent. Or
That's a good.
if I represent the buyer, I do a variable rate compensation. So it's not like 3.5 ain't gonna be, it's not gonna be 3.5 if I represent the buyer too. I'll take it down.
Yeah, so talk about that, variable variable rate. Remember, we used to have variable rate commission. Or, you know, and you know it that well. No, you don't know what that is. Variable rate commission is when, in the old days, when I would say, I'm gonna do a 6% listing. And if I represent both sides, I'll do it for 5. That's what a variable rate commission is. And the reason we did that is because if there's multiple offer situations and John brought an offer and I say, hey, there's another offer and I'm the other offer, then you're gonna look to see if it was variable rate to see if, okay, well, this guy's saving 1% if he goes with Will's offer over my offer. And it was a disadvantage to that other agent, right? Now, we don't have to, that went away, variable rate went away. Stating what the buyer agent was making went away. In the event the listing agent, this is E now, in the event the listing agent represents the buyer as limited agent or an unrepresented buyer as a transaction broker, the total compensation shall be, what are you gonna do? It's, so on this example, it said 4%. That means that there's, if I was representing both sides or an unrepresented buyer, I take 4%. So that listing agent's gonna, for the listing, the seller is gonna pay me 4%. And we don't have to disclose that now to the other side, right? But to Matt's explanation, you know, he puts 3.5 because now he can offer 0.5% if maybe that we were gonna offer 2.5 and that other agent's asking for 3. You could say, hey, you know what? Pay him 3, I'll take that 0.5%. So
If we're close enough, I have that 0.5%
Yeah.
at my discretion.
now don't be offering it up right away. Go ahead and see what that seller says, right? And if that seller says, oh, great, no problem. So now that's 6.5%, right? Yes, sir. That's what it is. So that's how that goes. I love it. I absolutely love it. But remember, I strongly advise that you get your seller to give something, offer something to the buyer, right? And disclose to the agent if they ask. Don't give it to them, right? But if they ask, is your seller offering buyer compensation? To be honest with you, I have never had anybody ask. I haven't had anybody ask. I have asked a couple times, but it's generally on new construction type stuff that I'm verbally doing. If it's just something that I go show, if it's an existing house I go show, I just write it. I write it in the purchase agreement. And I tell them.
I never asked for that with you. I cover it in you cover when you're signing agency, like, hey, it's how I get paid. And
Right.
the seller doesn't.
Yeah. When you're doing buyer agency,
Right.
yeah, you explain it to your buyer that, hey, this is what I do, you know, everything's negotiable. I'm gonna put 3% on the buyer agent because, explain to them, because it's what I have to ask for, and I can't get 3% unless I put 3% here, right? In the event that they come back, you know, we're gonna ask for 3 in the offer, and if they come back and say 2.5, I'm not gonna come back to you for that 0.5%. We're gonna do an addendum, change it to 2.5 for that property. And the addendum that we use, or that I use anyway, is property specific. So if the deal fell apart, you're back 3%. Right?
Hey, Will, this is Kathy. Hi. Oh, I should turn on my video. Hi. I actually did an open house where I had a potential buyer come in and they wanted to write an offer. So I contacted the listing agent and I did ask, I said, are you offering buyer agent, compensation? And they said yes. So we did one of the agreements, agency agreements for my commission. I did not have to write it into the offer then, because you can't do it in both. Have you ever done that?
Is that just recently you did this? Or where you?
Yeah, that was just the summer in Wisconsin.
Oh, so it's in a different state. Okay.
But I think it's the same rule.
Well, yeah, I don't know what
Well,
the,
this summer was before the lawsuit though.
yeah,
No, it was
It's-
after the lawsuit settled.
it was after the lawsuit. Okay.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know what the purchase agreement in Wisconsin states. I don't know. Our purchase agreement actually has it in there, a spot where we put the percentage in there, what we're asking. Right?
Right, and I left it out. I left it blank
You got
because
paid?
I had an agency agreement and it was the listing firm that was going to pay my commission.
It have to be in the purchase.
That's different than here. That's broker to broker is what Kathy's describing,
Uh,
not the way the state of South Dakota operates. If you leave it off the purchase agreement here, you're not gonna get paid.
Right. Yeah, no, you're not gonna.
We don't do broker to broker.
Really?
Okay.
That's
So
good to
it-
know.
That is different.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, before you write a purchase agreement here, call me. We'll go over it.
Yeah,
We go over it again, but I want to see. Yeah, cause if you didn't do it here, you wouldn't get paid. Exactly. Unless you get paid from your buyer. But you're not gonna get paid from the seller if you don't write it in the purchase
Yeah.
agreement,
So that's what I thought.
okay.
right?
All right, good to
That's
know.
that's a good question. That's a good question.
A lot of states work with a person broker out, so they kind of went old school where it used to be sub agency, right? So in that example, it sounds like basically the listing broker, not necessarily the agent, the actual broker pulled 6% or whatever, and had already agreed free by
Yeah.
the broker.
Weren't they doing, oh, Wyoming doesn't either, cause wasn't there a place in Wyoming, wasn't that Century 21?
They tried.
Yeah.
They just-
Yeah, so, right, none of the brokerages pay. I mean, they don't. The brokerages here don't do that. They don't say everything's going through us and we control who gets paid. Yeah, that's not how it goes. So, very good though. That's kind of a cool,
That was good, Kevin,
good,
for you.
very good question.
Okay. Well, good for me to know.
Yes. Yes, for sure. That's why you take the classes.
Yep.
F is transaction fee, so that's just where you're gonna write in what your transaction fee is. What is it? What is it?
170.
175. It's 175 that is the brokerage required fee. Unless it's VA, unless your client is VA, and then they don't charge it, right? Now, if you want to charge more for your transaction fee, that is totally up to you. You can keep it at 175. You can put it at 0 if you want. But if you put it at 0, you're paying the 175. So it'll come out of your commission. So if that's part of your negotiating with your buyer, and I do see some new agents do that because they're timid about asking for transaction fee. Just keep that in mind that Mr. Mr. Twigs back there will take $175 out.
SBA.
I just tell the brokerage charges this.
Yeah, that's, however you wanna explain it is, I mean, that's true. And if
And
you-
why?
I like transaction fees because it gives you a point of negotiation between you and the commission. So they start trying to negotiate your commission. Well, I can't negotiate on commission, but how about I split this $4.95 transaction fee?
Yeah,
You pay $2.50, I'll pay $2. Right? So it gives you a point of conversation before they can get to your commission. Does that make sense?
That's a good tip.
not a bad, yeah, and you know what, the longer you do this, little things like that, you sit in on classes. You got somebody like Chris comes in and that never even dawned on me to do that. I don't generally, we do 275. We've done that for quite a number of years. I've never had anybody push back, so I've always thought next year I'm gonna up it to 400. And I never do, but the next year I will, because I mean, everybody's doing it now.
Go back to that compensation thing.
Yep.
What? If there is not a buyer agent commission in the purchase agreement?
You're talking about her deal now?
No, I don't know. I want to make sure that I'm not like,
Okay, so if you didn't write in the purchase agreement, you didn't write
buyer
buyer
commission.
agent to get whatever.
I still can get paid buyer agent commission from the buyer.
Absolutely.
Okay. I was, when I
Absolutely.
heard that, I'm like, no, the buyer can pay me regardless of the.
Buyer can pay
Okay,
you,
It was
yeah.
the seller.
If your buyer is going to pay you,
Like, yeah, I'm gonna give you cash. I don't want it involved in purchase agreement.
yep. If he says, Matt, I'm gonna pay you $9,000, 3% on a $300,000 deal, I'm gonna take care of it. When you do the purchase agreement, you put 0 or leave it blank in compensation that you're asking for from the seller in the purchase agreement. Yep. And
Depends on the flow of money. Who's paying what.
we're gonna, and if you give me that purchase agreement on my listing, and I see that you have 0 or nothing in there, I'm going, hey, they're not asking for anything. That means Matt's getting paid from his buyer,
We'll expect the purchase price to be 2.5% lower.
maybe.
So have you had one of those as listing agent? Where they didn't ask, where the buyer agent was asking the seller?
I haven't, no, but
I have.
Amber did. Amber had one, and she came in my office and said, here's what I got. And it was a big property. And they're not asking for anything, and notorious agent on the other side that misses stuff all the time. And I said, well, don't call her. I just don't, don't say anything, because that's the first reaction a lot of us get is, oh, there's a mistake. I'm just gonna pick up the phone and I'm gonna call that other agent, because I think they made a mistake. Sometimes, I mean, there's different approaches, but in this case, no, do not call her. I would go to your client, present the offer, tell your client, hey, they didn't ask for any compensation, okay? They were gonna counter anyway. Let's just counter straight. And let them know that this agent is notorious for making mistakes like that. Don't be surprised if they come back and ask for it. I told her that. I said, that's how you prepare your seller for, hey, she might come back and realize what she did. and ask for it. Now, you can deny it or not, whatever, but it's a big property. It was an expensive property. So anyway, that's what happened.
Oh.
Yeah, cause I've always thought, cause I haven't had one either, and I'm like, how would I handle that when it comes up? Because you don't wanna make the contact to the buyer's agent. Cause at that point, you're effectively volunteering your seller's money. Hey, did you forget to put your fee in there? Well, no, I meant to have my buyer's agent, now that you brought it up, I'm gonna go put it in, right? But on the flip side, if they did forget it, you're looking at the transaction from hell. They're gonna come try to get it from you.
Blow up a closing.
And if, yeah, and if you say, no, we're not paying, the buyer's gonna fight to get out of it every chance they can, right? So it's kind of like, so I like how you just put it,
Yeah.
warning your seller, don't be surprised.
Yeah, don't be surprised if this comes back.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I've never had it
Probably a lot.
happen to me, but I had seen it. And that's exactly what happened. She came back and said, oh, I made a mistake. You know, now, an example, I know we're kind of getting off a little bit, but an example of one where I feel that I actually saw the mistake and I called the agent before I did anything, before I sent it to my buyer, because I had the buyer. It was a counter offer. And the numbers were, they countered, we offered lower. And so let's say we offered 370. Okay. And they countered at 280. Or something, it was something like that, but it was the 100,000. So I knew he meant 380. And it said 280, and I didn't say anything to my buyer. I knew it was a total mistake on his part. So I called him up and I said, hey, you might want to look at that counter offer. And he pulled it up and he goes, oh shit, thank you. And he changed it. But the thing is, his client signed it. So his client obviously didn't read it. Because he would have, saw it was $100,000 less than what he wanted to offer. So that to me that one is gonna blow up. That won't even get that. Yeah, that wouldn't even get anywhere. Because it would be, no, that's not what I meant. And I would have felt like a schmuck calling my guy and saying, hey, we got it they counter offer $100,000 less. Yeah, that to me, you gotta do.
Like when the bank accidentally puts an extra $1,000 in the account. Think of this, no. They'll figure it out, withdraw it immediately. Yeah, close your account now.
So anyway, so there's times to point it out, and there's times not to. Another thing not to point out, in my opinion, are when we went through purchase agreements and we talked about home inspection dates. If you're on the listing end of it, if you're a listing side, don't call the other agent and say, hey, when are you gonna get that contingency removal over to me? Because it's your client's advantage if they miss it, right? Now, what happens if they miss it?
They don't have the opportunity to do one.
They don't have the opportunity to ask to get out of a deal because we didn't do what they asked for. They can still ask. They can still send the contingency removal over. In fact, that's usually what happens. And then that's when we see that they missed the date. Now, does that mean, yippee, you're screwed? We're good? No. Go to your seller and you say, okay, here's what they're asking for. But they missed the date. Okay? Keep in mind, they missed the date. So we really don't have to do anything and they can't get out of the deal because we didn't do anything. But take a look at it. see if there's anything you wanna do that you're willing to do, and we'll go back to them. And I've done that, I've had it 2 or 3 times where people have missed the date. And I handle it that way, and there's always a couple little things that my client will pick out and say, we'll do that. Then I go back to the other agent, and I say, well, you missed the date, but I talked to my client. And he's willing to do this, this, and this. Nobody says anything, and just move on.
You're talking about just the initial getting the home inspection done and getting your contingency removal to begin with, right?
Correct.
Because if you do that on time, but fail to meet the next deadline, the
That's on
contract,
me, yeah,
yeah, the contract is null and void.
correct.
Yeah.
And that is what happened on the deal that I just had. She missed getting it to me. She called and said, yeah, he doesn't want to do any of that stuff. She never got it signed and sent over to me. Now, I don't know if he goes to court, is he gonna say, well, I told my agent to tell him that? I don't know. It depends on what judge you get, right? Well, verbal counts, you could see some goofy judge saying that. But luckily, we didn't have to do that. He signed and canceled. We finally got it. So anyway. All right, any more questions on broker compensation? Do you understand how that works? Do you understand the kind of the coolness of the negotiating part of it? All right. So after that, it says a broker is an exclusive agent, and during the period of this agreement, property is sold by a client broker, a cooperating broker, or anyone else, or if the broker is a non-exclusive agent and the property is sold to a purchaser identified by broker and submitted to client in writing, or should any of the aforementioned produce a purchaser ready, willing, and able to purchase property, a client agrees to pay the compensation.
It really breaks them.
Oh my gosh. So basically, if somebody comes ready, willing, and able, the client, meaning the seller, agrees to pay compensation as they stated. So if they said they're not gonna pay compensation. Basically, as stated above. So if somebody comes in, if they say they're not gonna pay a buyer agent, but they're paying us, obviously, so we're getting paid as stated above. If he agrees to pay the 2% or up to 2% or 2.5% of a buyer agent, they're paying us and the buyer agent. It's just basically. I hate those sentences. I agree with you. They just gobbledygook.
It's not a test question.
What's that?
It looks like a test question.
It does, yeah. B is within 90 calendar days, the expiration. So this clause is just like the buyer agency clause, where if they get out of the deal with you and try to go behind your back to sell it to a buyer, they're gonna owe you compensation. And I put 90 days in there. A lot of people put 180. I've seen some people put a year. But what that's doing is that's keeping the seller from getting out of the contract with you, trying to sell it to a buyer without using the agent. So they're trying to get away from paying your commission, right? Now, if they go and if they fire John and go hire Matt, it doesn't, all that's all that's gone. First of all, the guy's crazy, number one.
Completely.
But yeah, if they fire you and hire another agent, then that scenario is gone. Okay, so they're doing it without the help of an agent, right?
So just that they ditch the.
If they ditch the agent, don't hire another one, yep. Yep. Number 4 is earnest money. So this is what I do. I always offer to give in most of the deals. I mean, if you have a huge deal where you get a lot of earnest money, might be different, but in a normal listing, I always put 100% to the seller, 0 to buyer agent. And here's why, and it's a really, maybe it's stupid, maybe it's, I look at it different, but if you've got a situation where you get a contract, the deal falls apart, and the seller can keep the buyer's earnest money, which is a whole different, I mean, that's hard to do anyway. But if you have that, and let's say it's $5,000 earnest money, first of all, that listing agent's gonna be, or that seller's gonna be pretty upset that they're backing out at the last minute, because that's really the only time you can keep earnest money, is if all contingencies are removed and they just fail. Well, they're thinking, well, at least I get the $5,000. Well, no, really, as our contract states, because we're splitting it, so you're only getting 25. I don't want to go through that. I did that one time. Well, and you get hard feelings out. Now the guy's not only pissed at that side, now he's pissed at you too.
He's pissed at all real estate
Yeah,
professionals.
everybody.
Salespeople.
And I did that, and I think I ended up giving it to him. Said, you know what, yeah, that was a crappy deal. You go ahead and take it. But that was the last time I ever split it 50-50. Now, if you've got a huge property and you're gonna get $25,000 worth of, earnest money, maybe you put in there 25%, 75, something like that, just.
That would help offset some of your marketing costs.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it is, but most of the time, you're marketing that anyway. In my head, you're marketing it anyway. And if the deal falls through, 95% of the time, you're just gonna put it back active, and it's just gonna keep going. But yes, that's kind of why they give you the option, is to, hey, I did a bunch of work on this side, once it was under contract, get things going, and then it falls apart. So,
The listing office is Keller Williams, not the broker associate, right? When it says it's gonna give it to the listing office. that's
yes,
not-
everything goes through the listing office, okay?
Right, that's what I understood, so that's why I was.
Yep.
clarifying. Okay.
Anytime they talk about it, broker, it's, the listing is owned by Keller Williams. And we're just a pawn in this deal. A pawn in the game of
And
love.
the fish that swim in it.
That's right. That's right. Proceeds disbursements. Number 5, it's agreed that the listing office and or closing house shall hold the balance of the sales price for account of seller until all expenses incurred on the seller's behalf relating to the sale of property or building. We don't do escrow anymore, so we don't hold it, right?
But by marking escrow companies we're holding, we're fulfilling.
Adhering to, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's the title company that's doing that. Transfer title, this is just saying that, the seller the seller states that if any liens and judgments come up in the title search, they're going to do everything possible to pay those liens off so they can clear the title and sell the property. That's basically what that is. And then number 7 is authorization. So we're gonna have our clients initial in all these spots, whether they agree or disagree. So we're gonna advertise it on the MLS, usually that's a yes. Advertise it on the computer and other media, yes. Place a sign in the property. Okay, so I've had people list property or sell their property where they don't want to sign. So if they don't want to sign, they're gonna initial no, okay? Same thing with the lockbox. Some high dollar houses don't want a lockbox on it. They're gonna want you as the listing agent to be present for all showings. Doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes on really, really high-end properties, that happens. So if that is that way, you're going to put in agent-only remarks in the MLS that property has no lockbox. Listing agent will accompany buyer and buyer's agents to all showings. Something to that effect that makes people know that I'm gonna be there.
Terrible.
Huh?
So that sounds terrible.
So an
Well-
apartment building, you're gonna have to be there every time.
Oh, yeah, something like that for sure, yeah. Request mortgagee to release information to the broker. So the mortgagee, I mean. We really don't do that too much anymore.
You know, title,
Yeah,
and they have a different authorization, so.
right. I don't even do authorization form anymore. We used to have that form where we would fill out the social security number and the account number and everybody sign it. Well, I don't do that anymore because when we do it, the title company says, oh, we use our own, and they make everybody re-sign it, so. Kind of makes that obsolete, right?
Do you need to send them to yes or no, or does it?
I would just do, it doesn't matter. I mean, if I think about it, sometimes Angel puts signatures on all the yeses, just out of habit. I mean, doesn't mean, we just won't ask them. We'll just have the title company ask them. So, I guess if I was being real spot on, I'd probably say no on that one, but I don't think it really matters. Request utility information, we can't do that really anymore either, with all the,
Utility companies won't let them pay.
no, they won't. So the client's gonna have to get that information, but if we request it from the client, they'll do it, so I usually put yes on that. Disclose to purchasers or agents that seller has received other offers. Have this conversation with your client, because when you talk about, they don't really have that in there anymore, but, or maybe they do. Talk about multiple offers. Well, they don't anymore. There's a lot of stuff that got changed, but, they used to have the deal in there talking about multiple offers on the other listing agreement, and bottom line is discuss multiple offer situations. Hey, we could have 2 offers, and I really think that it's on your best interest to let everybody know that we have multiple offers. Why is that? Why do you think that would be? That
Bring their best offer then.
bring their best offer. I always tell my client, yeah, I think we should let everybody know. And don't forget to do that. It's really, really easy to forget to do it, especially to the first offer in. Did that one time to an old cranky Remax agent,
That's all they have over there.
and that's all they have over there.
Is there a distinction?
These old cranky, and then they're all the old cranky lady ones, really. And the lady ones are really cranky, but,
They're
Is
in a
that-
puzzle.
Is that one Joanne over?
yep. All of Joanne was cool.
I love Joanne, yeah.
Joanne was awesome. No, but I did that one time and we had like 5 offers on this place. And everybody knew except the first person that came in, because you don't think about that. We got an offer. Now we get the second offer in and you tell hey, just to let you know, we have another offer. Well, that gives the advantage to this person because they're gonna rewrite it or add to what they were gonna do. And I went through the whole dang thing. And I forgot to tell the first lady that there was another offer. And did I get my ass chewed big time? And of course, she didn't win it. Oh my God. I was just felt stupid. Cause it's like, duh, what, come on, Will.
Do you let, as a listing agent, do you let buyer agents know if you have knowledge that other offers are likely to be coming in?
Yes,
I do too.
I'll say. I got a call or text, they're writing an offer, haven't got it yet.
Yeah.
Now, have you said that and not got the other offer? Yes, I have too.
Well, I even update that, like just,
Mhm.
hey, heads up, I still haven't received the other
I
offer.
still haven't received it. So,
I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to try to, if it makes a difference in the buyer bringing, coming in $5,000 higher, because there might be another offer. Working for your client, in my opinion.
interesting question, and I'm gonna throw it to our experienced guys in here. Or experienced agents, I should say, sorry.
They're all guys. Yeah.
They're all guys, yeah, but I didn't want you guys to feel bad.
You still call them-
So, I'm sorry. There was a situation that I saw, I get to see a lot of stuff now. Situation that there was 2 offers, it was multiple offer situation. And our agent had the buyer. They put in an offer at asking price, asked for some buyer or some seller concessions, so 5,000 seller concessions. Went full price. The listing agent called our agent up and said, hey, let you know, and he used the word competing offer. I have another competing offer. Just wanted to let you know. So our agent talked to his client. And his client decided to up the price $5,000. I think to cover the 5,000 that he was getting. In concessions. They got the offer, but in the counter offer, they raised it 5,000. And our agent said, we'd like to see proof of the competing offer. They accepted our agent's offer. They sent the competing offer over and it was $15,000 under asking price.
Uh-huh. Still a competing offer.
Absolutely. So I got the question from the agent and the agent was just furious. That is not a competing offer, blah, blah, blah. He screwed my client. And I said, not really, because all they did was basically say they had another offer. bring your highest and best or whatever, and they did. So they were willing to go up that high to get the house, right? So I didn't feel that that listing agent did anything wrong. In fact,
No,
he
I
was
mean, maybe a little.
a little,
crappy.
little stinky, but
I would have, as buyer's agent, I probably would have went back to the escalation clause. That would have held you at the original
there you
offer
go.
when that first offer too.
There you go. That's exactly right. So I don't think the listing agent did anything wrong because he's trying to get the best deal for his client, really.
Yeah, and I would do the same thing.
And yeah, and the buyer agent probably should have done escalation clause. Hey, we're willing to go up $5,000 over if you push us that far, right? Anyway, I thought it was interesting. And it's just that it's the perception sometimes, you get.
Could someone have told that agent that they weren't gonna share that information of the other offer? Cause he got upset because it was so low, but nobody had to show him that. did they?
Well, he asked, our agent asked to see it
And were they
in,
required?
in the purchase agreement.
Oh, gotcha,
Yeah,
okay.
or
I
the counter
thought
offer
they
or
just
whatever.
said, hey, by the way, can I take a look at that?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, they
'Cause I was
didn't
like,
call.
why would they
Some kick
do
rocks and
that?
also.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that but if everybody's agreeing to it.
Okay,
And that's the other thing, if Chris calls me and says, hey, Will, can you send that over? I'd kind of like to see it. Not without my
that's where
guy
my question
saying
was coming in,
so,
I'm like, how, they got really upset about it, but how did they get, basically the authorization to see it?
Yeah,
That's-
it was
Because it was in.
in the offer, yeah.
Right.
You
And
know,
the
but
buyer agent did write requesting to see it, because otherwise you're taking the other agent's word that they even have it.
right.
Heaven forbid they would actually lie.
And that
Not trust
happens.
anybody.
That
That's
happens.
my client's money.
Hey, here's the other thing with your escalation clause. We have an escalation clause form that is awesome. I don't know how many agents that we have that don't utilize that form. That to me is, I will never do an escalation clause without that form. Everything's the same. It asks for the proof. It has what you're willing to go to and how much you're willing to go up. I think it's a great form. And you get a lot of agents that just try to write it in other provisions. And they don't, they miss stuff. It's not uniform. It's not the same thing every time they do it. So,
Well, and they usually miss the net part of it, which the
Yeah.
escalation clause form.
Yeah,
So you can get pushed into a high price, even though the other offer's asking for 20 grand back. So like,
yeah,
you're getting pushed higher without having to.
right.
You don't do this automatically, just if you've been informed that there is.
if I'm made aware that I'm
Okay.
competing against another
Okay.
buyer.
So G is where they say
Is it in
disclose to
the-
purchasers or other agents that there's other offers. And I always tell them, yes, we need to do that because it's gonna help you and it's gonna help you get a better price. And then H is permission to change status on MLS, which we never had that on there, but obviously somebody got mad at one time.
That's why we have all this.
Yeah, that's why we have all this. What do we do when we get it under contract? Automatically, we go into the MLS and we change it to under contract because we want people to see that it's under contract, so they don't go and show it, right? It's really a courtesy thing, but I don't know what happened. Somebody got mad. You don't change that on, I don't know. Just all of a sudden it popped up and it was in there.
Well, MLS rules are what, 24 hours? What is that?
Probably, yeah,
Otherwise they consider it kind of false advertising.
yeah. Well, and I've had it too, where I've had a listing or I'm showing a listing. And I go show it, I usually check, like say if I set up something today for tomorrow, I'll check just to make sure that it's still active on the MLS.
You'll use that.
And then you go show it, cause it says it's active, and they've already got an offer on it. And they knew you were showing it, but they didn't have the courtesy to call you and tell you that it's not available.
I've
Just
done
in
that.
case it falls.
Sorry.
What did you, I missed that.
I've done it too.
What'd you do?
I've done it too.
Especially when it's crazy busy and you get a great offer, so you take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you've got an appointment to look at a property, you set it up the day before, you look at it, the day that you're showing it, it says active. And then it's really under contract and they don't even tell you. Hey, we're gonna write an offer on that. Oh, sorry. Oh, we just put it under contract.
Just now,
Oh, I literally just got it 5 minutes ago.
It wasn't yesterday afternoon.
Yep, I have used that line. All right, number 8 is personal property. I usually just put fee bill of sale. That's what I do, but some agents write it all out and stuff. I don't like to do that, and number 1, I'm lazy and I don't like to write all the stuff on there. But number 2 is if something does change, now you've got to do an addendum on the listing agreement because they decided not to sell the washer and dryer with the place, right? Instead just change it on the bill.
I don't know, somebody, some point said they put C bill of sale because they don't. If there's a lender, like the lender gets a copy of the purchase agreement,
That's a good point too.
and if it's in there, then there's, I guess, a chance that the appraiser is going to account for that property and deduct it from the house value.
The appraiser, yeah, you're right.
Okay,
The appraisers usually give washer dryers, fridge stoves, freezers, window coverings, those kind of items. They're usually cool with that. When you start adding hot tubs and riding lawnmowers
I got
and,
nailed on a hot tub one time where
Yep.
I didn't meet appraisal because the hot tub was.
Yep.
Yeah.
yep, very, very touchy stuff. So,
Yeah, we had to put it on the addendum. Anything weird had to go on the addendum.
well, an addendum is still gonna get shared with, an
Yeah,
addendum will
well,
get shared.
with the loan, I guess, more than the appraisal, had to do with the loan.
Yeah.
Not that
I
specific.
usually don't. I would do a bill of sale outside.
yeah,
But I
outside
was
the
on
deal.
fires. I'm gonna write now,
Oh, okay.
I'm not here.
Depends on the loan product too, though, so like, if they're taking a commercial loan or, dollar cost loan for like a rental property, then the appraiser does get copies of this.
Yuck.
Because it's considered a business. basically.
And now that we're talking with that kind of stuff, the bare minimum sent to the lender. I make them ask for stuff. I don't wanna send bill of sales. I don't don't send an inspection report
or the contingency.
or the contingency removal. Don't do any of that. Don't put a radon test in the purchase agreement. Don't say contingent upon acceptable radon test. Because that lender now is gonna wanna see that radon test. And sometimes you handle that a whole different way, right? We're gonna look at that in the home inspection, correct? In the home inspection, we're gonna ask for the radon mitigation system, and maybe we negotiate it different. Maybe we knock $1,500 off the purchase price, things like that. If you do radon in the purchase agreement, the lender is gonna make sure, number one, that they want a copy of that test. And if it's over a 4, they're gonna make you do that mitigation system. Doesn't matter how you negotiated it out.
If you have a contingency removal, like I have a buyer, we wrote a cash offer, we got a home inspection, and the results had, tested high for radon and some other things. But, in lieu of repairs, they just, can we just knock $5,000 off the price?
Mhm.
So when I drafted that contingency removal, I put the verbiage in there about, buyer and seller, shall, or the price shall be. I can just pull it up. Basically, buyer and seller had to agree or both sign off on an amendment to change the purchase price $5,000. Do you do that, or do you only do the,
Well, first of all, it's a cash deal, so probably doesn't matter what you do.
no, just
Yeah.
general practice,
I,
amendment to. There it is.
I run them
an amendment, you're gonna have to share that. If you have a lender, you're gonna have to share it.
But the amendment doesn't have the contingency removal items. So the contingency removal says in lieu of repair requests for plumbing, electrical, radon hazards, and unknown potential risk associated with not being able to have everything inspected due to cold weather. Buyer and seller agree to amend the purchase price minus $5,000, and then when I sent this over, I sent an amendment itself to,
And it was a cash deal?
yeah, it wouldn't really apply to the cash deal,
But if it was a cash deal, that is fine to me, because you're spelling it out. If it was a lending situation, I would just say purchase price to be whatever $5,000 less is,
that's why I do the.
and I would just
Like if
leave
there was
it.
a loan, I'd be able to give this amendment to them without,
Yeah, but I wouldn't spell anything out.
it's not on the amendment.
Okay. Well, you said in lieu of plumbing,
Only on the
electrical.
contingency removal.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't put anything, I would just basically, if you're changing the price because you're gonna do the radon system instead of the seller, and they're just knocking $2,000 off the price because you're doing it, not them, just lower it $2,000 to be done. Don't say what for, because then you're opening up a whole can of worms with
Well,
lenders.
South Dakota Housing, so I just had a situation come up, cause I was on the buyer side, sold the house in like August with EXP. And they came back to me like last month for the contingency. level.
Why?
Some about South Dakota Housing needed it for their paperwork.
Did it close?
We had already closed, we closed in August.
Yeah, okay, send it to them. What are they gonna do?
Well,
I wonder if they got an audit and didn't have that.
Oh,
on
maybe
file.
so, maybe
Probably,
so. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe they did. Yeah, send it to them. But I really hesitate sending anything that's gonna throw a wrench.
Have you had clients provide it to their lenders?
Yes,
That was my question. How do you educate them?
yes, don't send. I've had them send, whole inspections.
So I was
And they
wondering,
read through the whole inspection and they say, this loose toilet here, has that been taken care of? It's like, are you kidding me? You know what we're having now, though? We're having lenders ask for our buyer agency forms.
I sent mine to CMG a couple weeks back.
Yep,
Carrie Garner.
yep.
Because they need to see if the person they're about to lend money to is on hook for the 3% or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they do, yeah. But a buyer agency isn't gonna cover that. I mean, it's always gonna say 3% in there, but they don't know that, they should be able to look at the purchase agreement to know. Right? So if that purchase agreement says 3% and it's been accepted, then they know that the buyer's not on the hook for that.
Right. But in their pre-approval, especially with CMG, because they go through the full shebang pre-approval, they have to figure that the buyer is going to have to fork out that 3%.
Really?
in their
Just for the
closing.
pre-approval part?
Yeah, the closing, which sets their budget, right? So that could be the difference.
Wow.
between, 350 and 300.
Wow.
And so
That's
like
not
Tanner, because Tanner is my go-to lender, so what he does is he has the conversation of, if you end up having to pay this, your budget's this. If you can get the seller to pay it, then your budget's
Yeah.
actually this.
Yeah.
Right. So keep that in mind when you're writing an offer. If you need to be at 300, if you have to pay your agent, don't be writing on 350 unless you know you're going to sell it.
Right.
So,
And the way I teach it is the buyer is never going to not know that they are not, or that they are having to pay. You're never gonna know. It's not gonna be a surprise. You're not gonna say, well, I didn't know if I was paying that. No. Remember, we had that conversation. And because if we get counter offered 0, that they're not paying me, then I'm gonna say to the buyer, hey, they're not paying me. They didn't agree to our 3%. They're not paying me anything. Do you want to still buy this house, or do we want to, reject it and go on?
The listing, I sent CMG a listing agreement because I reached out to them and asked what, something about their loan payoff amount or something to do a net sheet. And Carrie asked to see, did they authorize it in the listing agreement? Because they were buying too.
Oh, and there's your listing agreement. It says,
Request mortgagee to release information.
there you go.
So he wouldn't do it until I was like, well, they allowed me to, I have him assigned
But
clients.
he wants to see it.
I sent him
There
that,
you go.
okay, yeah,
You're covered.
their payoff is this much and really just splitting hairs on the buy side.
And that, I didn't think about that.
Well, it also says the same thing with request utility companies to release info.
Yeah,
I've had Western Electric send me information once, but usually they're not even that.
Okay, to end this really quick here, because we've got 7 minutes. 13 is other professional services, so basically, we don't do anything other than
13.
sell the house, right? If you've got any other professional services, contact a lawyer or an attorney or an accountant, that kind of thing. Right?
What if this is for sale by owner? What if a for sale by owner wants to hire you only for the purpose of fielding phone calls? Hey, I work out of town. I work in a mine. I'm not on my phone during work.
When I'm selling my
And I
house. by
need, yeah, I'm
myself.
selling myself and I need somebody to take calls for me.
I've never, I'd probably tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's not a
25 bucks.
listing agreement.
$25. What?
well, it's a
It's a, what is it?
transaction broker.
It's a transactional brokerage is what I went with. I got paid, but I had to disclose every time I got a call. I do not work for the seller. I'm
Right.
hired only to field calls because of their job.
Did he pay you up front?
No, I got,
Paid
no,
up
I did
closing?
get paid up front.
Did
Yeah,
ya? Then, yeah. But I would
super weird.
make it, yeah, I mean, there's probably nothing. Did they pay the brokerage?
It went through the brokerage.
Okay.
Yeah, Tim, what?
Well, if you got paid outside of the brokerage, then, I mean, it's all being recorded, but I wouldn't say anything to you, but yeah, everything like that's gotta go through the brokerage.
He even has you on camera.
No, absolutely.
What was that again?
When in doubt, call the brokers, because I wasn't sure. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not a commission check. it's
No,
not
that's kind
closing.
of weird. That's weird.
But
but
another time, an
Make it worth
out-of-state
your
buyer,
while.
an out-of-state buyer flew in on a weekend, showed him some houses, he left, sent a $500 check in the mail. Thank you for your time. Use this for gas and food. Tim, what do I do here? Like, are they going to take freaking cap and royalties out of this or what?
What do you do? You just let you keep them. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
Shalisa actually recommended that.
Yeah, because they don't want to deal with that. But you did the right thing by calling them.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
usually what they do. If you call them, that's usually what they do. Yeah. All right, other instructions, number 14 is basically other provisions. So if
We're done.
there's other things that we want to write in, like we'll list it on this day, or, you know, whatever.
I'm gonna use that, withhold from the MLS.
Yeah,
If that's what's in my brain, because it's so like in my brain.
Yep. So, you know, they used to use the withhold from the MLS, and that's maybe what I was thinking. I haven't used that form in years. But if you do a withhold from the MLS used to require us, if we were doing that, they used to require us to send that form to them.
Yeah.
So they knew.
Yep.
Hmm.
Now they
And,
don't.
I've had one seller,
I've done it twice now.
a farmer rancher hired me to list his property, but did not want it on anywhere digital, MLS or nothing. He wanted me to sell it to a local rancher, like in
Oh,
the vicinity out northeast, and that was weird. But it was just simple as I'll throw it no, not on the MLS.
Or everything's no on the listening agreement. Everything's no on this. You're not
It's
gonna
just-
put,
it's just more about that time. Right there.
so the contract for deed that I'm doing, I signed a listing agreement with the lady, because I'm representing her, not the buyers. And I had her initial no on everything down there, because we're not putting it on the MLS,
What about a sign in the yard?
we're not putting sign, we're not doing
I
any
put
of
so I did put a sign on that property.
that. So, but you can say no on advertising the MLS, you can have an initial there and you're good.
What's the difference between computerized and other media and MLS? Is that like email campaigns?
Yeah. Social media, yeah,
Printed.
I think a lot of this is outdated.
I kind of want to have, I kind of want to see if I can find a seller to let me do no to advertise MLS, but yes to computerized and other media.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Well,
You're gonna stir the pot.
I'm good like that.
Okay, all right,
What that would be like.
Do it.
next week, we're gonna go over seller's disclosure. Because seller's disclosure is pretty
Specifically
pretty,
for the MLS over.
important,
over
and then we'll go through the amendments and stuff like that, but then we'll be done.
Sometime.
Okay? Hey, thanks, John, for coming all the way up. That was good. Good to have you. Hope you learned something. Or I hope it was beneficial to you.
Yeah, it's the new forms. It said metal ones are clay tablets.
Yeah. Well, don't use those.
Now,
I have 0 unread emails. For the first time in 6 years.
Do you do not use Dotloop?
I do. I just, when I'm doing this, I go grab my own mind map. So,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
and I do like doing, you know, as nice as you are, the back of your head is not good, but gonna be fun.
You guys still alive in here?
We're driving, Tim.
All right. That was funny.
Okay. See ya. I forgot to end this.